So we're here with Racing Pride today, doing some driving with our awesome ERA cars just off the production lines. This is the first one, and yeah, really great day. Got to see the car on track, so that's always awesome. And lots of other crazy cars here for a track day, so just a really fun day on track.
One to be played with, my whole crew's on the same kick. I'm top dog, I'm A-list, I'm a short shot, I can't miss. It's what I do, I was made for this. Married to the game like I'm chained to this. No matter how hard you try, me and you ain't the same as this. I'm a beast, I'm a dog, I'm a monster. Here's a message, I'm aggressive and I'm on ya. Put me to the test, I'ma come in first. Everybody wanna be the best, but no one wants to work. Look around. Nowhere to go, nowhere to turn to. You on your own. You don't wanna mess with me. I'm the best there is, the best there was. I'm the best there ever will be. You don't wanna mess with me. Keep testing me, and then you'll see. For success, I got the recipe. You don't wanna mess with me.
Introducing Extreme E, the world's first all-electric rally series. Racing around the world in a bid to highlight the most important climate issues of our generation.
Time is running out, but sport may have one of the answers.
Using sport as a way to highlight climate change is very important.
We got all-electric race cars racing on some of the most extreme environments in the world.
Those environments are changing very fast. Electric cars are part of the solution.
Nothing like this has ever been done before.
Join our world-leading scientists aboard our floating lab, offering key insights into global climate patterns.
The Greenland ice sheet has been around for several million years. The ice is running off as water and increasing the rate of global sea level rise.
Teams and sponsors from around the world. With elite male and female drivers.
Let's go.
Racing as equals.
Go!
In the most remote corners of planet Earth that remain at risk. Extreme E is here to revolutionize the world of motorsport.
This is going to be the most extreme motorsport.
I'm super impressed.
I'm still trying to adapt to it.
It's really important for women in motorsport to be highlighted like this.
Brand new.
Extreme E. The Electric Odyssey starts now.
All right, good day, everybody. It is 2022. You would think that virtually we got this figured out now. That's on me, but let's jump right in. We're excited to start our third Green Racing Virtual Summit series. The first one brought in 2022, brought to you by Latam Mobility and Green Racing News. I'd love to welcome our first amazing panel of the day, discussing the 2022, the year of sustainability in motorsports. My name is Bill Beverley from Evolectric. I'm thrilled to be back moderating another amazing, engaging virtual event, and I'm joined by a fresh group of planet shakers in the ever-growing clean tech motorsports arena. But first, I'd like to say a very brief amount of information about myself and the company that I represent. So I'm co-founder, co-CEO, and CTO of Evolectric. We're a USA and Latam-based technology company with expertise in EV powertrains and batteries. And we're developing and deploying technology which makes any vehicle electric. We're focused on electrifying fleets in the 335 million combustion engine vehicles, which are already on the road today. We leverage software and data to tackle the upfront cost parity versus non-traditional and traditional ICE vehicles, while also enabling and electrifying existing makes and models through our proprietary hardware and modular architecture. I myself started my own zero emissions motorsports journey back in the special programs days at Faraday Future. We got to work with FF Penske Dragon Racing for seasons 3 and 4 of the Formula E Championship. We also went up Pikes Peak in 2017 with our vehicle, FF91. And we were also fortunate to explore partnerships and joint venture relationships with leading automotive OEMs at the time, such as Aston Martin. And I spent 2 years of director of technical sales of applications at Romeo Power, selling batteries to some of the most boundary-pushing motorsports applications. So enough about me. We're here to listen to our fantastic panel and explore a little bit more about what we're doing in this arena here. So without further ado, hello to all of our panelists. I'm going to go ahead and briefly introduce each one of you at a time. Please share a little bit more about yourselves and your brand organization for our audience. So let's start with Valentina Conti, Managing Director of World E-Bike Series, WES. It's an electric bike exclusive World Cup racing series and has recently partnered with our own Green Racing News as an official content partner. Hi, Valentina, how are you doing today?
Hi, guys. Hi, everyone. Thanks for inviting. Very well. Great to be here with you.
Great to have you. Next is Beth Georgiou, co-founder and director of the ERA Championship, which is the world's first all-electric junior Formula racing series. Beth, I just really want to honestly say, finally, an accessible electric competitive racing series aimed at fostering rising youth talent. So could you share a little bit more, please?
Yeah, thank you. Well, I mean, you said it all in the introduction, really. So I'm from the Software AG ERA Championship. We're the world's first all-electric junior Formula racing series. Essentially, we have redesigned Formula 4 style vehicle to be all electric. I'm actually joining now from POR, where we are demonstrating alongside the FIA ETCR World Cup this weekend, ready to start racing with them in Istanbul in a few weeks' time. So exciting.
Wow. Joining us from right across the road there. It's awesome. Thank you very much for your time. So please meet Khalil Beschir, co-founder and COO of eScooter Championship, ESC. It's a motorsports veteran-driven electric scooter racing series, which is only days away from their first race in London. So, hello, Khalil. Why don't you share a little bit of how you're excited about the next few weeks, maybe?
Yeah, thank you, Bill. Thanks for having us again with you guys, and thanks for everyone joining. Yeah, we're very excited. We are only probably 10 days away from our first ever electric scooter racing or race. Our first race is in London. It has been a long journey, started during the pandemic, but we're very happy to be where we are today, and we can't wait to share with you the new micromobility sport.
Awesome. It's wonderful, Khalil. All the best. Great luck on this first event. We're crossing our fingers for you. So. And lastly, but absolutely not least, please meet James Taylor, Chief Champion Officer of Extreme E, which, if you don't know by now, it's an FIA-sanctioned electric off-road racing series, which debuted in 2021, and it operates on an international scale. Round 1 was in Saudi Arabia. It's complete as of February. The series is running towards its next round in Italy in July. So without further ado, hey, James, how you doing? How's it going?
Hi, Bill. Hi, everyone. Yeah, really well, thank you. It's great to be here, and it's only a pleasure to be part of this discussion today. As you said, we started the year in Saudi Arabia with the next stop in Sardinia, where we're having a double-header event, and then we're heading down to South America. So first to Chile, where we'll be racing in a mine, and then finally we'll round off the series in Uruguay at the end of the year.
Wow, that's amazing. You really find the most inhospitable places to demonstrate the technology. So it's amazing. Congratulations.
We certainly try. Thank you.
Yeah, wonderful. So thank you, everybody, for joining us. Let's go ahead and open the conversation for questions. And I have a couple of prepared questions that I'll go ahead and run through, and then we'll keep our eyes on anything that comes through from the audience, the viewing audience, and we'll kind of mix it through. So without any delay, let's go ahead and start. So as this panel is all about 2022 being the year of sustainability in motorsports, can you each share a little bit about, in your own words, how your respective series or your respective championship is specifically tackling sustainability, whether it's materials, operations, contributions, or otherwise? We'll go ahead and start with Valentina.
Yeah, thank you. Well, actually, WES, where the World E-Bike Series, being a cycling discipline, and of course, and specifically an e-cross country discipline, is clearly as a lower impact, let's say, on the environment as a sport itself compared to others. So for holding our races, for just to give you an example, we don't need to build up our racetracks, or we don't need to build up infrastructures or no facilities. So it's easier maybe for us than for other organizers, as we just take advantage of what the nature offers and what the natural conditions of our territories, the hosting venues offer. So simply mountains, hills, woods, rocks, and green, basically. So definitely an easier job in both, let me say. And clearly, we do design the tracks ourselves. So our job is to go and discover and explore the territories at the hosting venues and try to get the most out of it. So let's say that probably we just get what the natural features are, and this is definitely easier and more sustainable than other discipline, other sports.
Yeah, that's a refreshing angle to be able to operate in a space that's naturally refreshing and green, like you said.
Yeah.
It's very, very interesting, very cool. So I think it's going to be a unique experience for a lot of the new viewers, a lot of new members. So yeah, thank you for sharing.
Thank you.
Beth, what about you? All right, we'll pause a second, come back around to Beth. How about Khalil?
Yeah, I mean, first of all, I always thank all other championships, because we all in a sport, we push each other for more sustainable sport, and then we end up all, I think, doing some great things for our planet. It's very important for us from, I think from the day we launched ESC, our sustainability mission was there. So we are, we look at everything. So since we launched the series, we have been a net zero carbon racing series from the inception. We look at everything. So from the transport to go to the races, obviously we are not car racing, so scooters are small. We don't have to ship too many things, but we ended up basically, because of the safety, to develop our own safety barriers. So you have to take barriers around from a place to a place. We try to always look at every department. If you look at the scooter today, the scooter is, if you go into the details where we are, we needed to use some material on the sustainability. So for example, if you look at the S1X today, it's done from natural fiber. The battery is the latest fully recycled battery technology we use. Of course, we have great also partners. We partnered, I think, with the best people in the field to help us on the sustainability mission we are on. Passes. So we look at every single detail, from the shipping to go around the world. Also, when we run our events, we are trying to run the events on battery. So our London event is run on a battery. So we look at every single detail, and we will make sure always we are net zero.
Wow, it's wonderful. I appreciate the overworking effort.
I also like to speaking about a new, we are working now, you will see it very soon. We are developing also a new tire. And the tires we'll be using in the scooter very, very soon. They are eco tires. We use a lot of vegetable oil materials in them. So this is something cool we are working on for the future as well.
Wow, that's wonderful. It's refreshing. You got this handled. So I appreciate the gusto for the sustainability. The world appreciates it. So. All right, Beth, let's give it another shot. Can you hear us all right? Would you like to tackle that question?
I didn't hear the question, unfortunately. That's the bit that I missed.
No problem. So this panel, as you know, is part of the, it's all about 2022 being the year of sustainability in motorsports. So we just wanted to understand a little bit in your own words of how your series is specifically tackling sustainability, whether it's, again, materials, operations, contributions, or otherwise, if you don't mind sharing.
Yeah, so for us, it's a really holistic approach and about transparency as well. For me personally, in my own life, I feel like we often all want to say that we're doing things perfectly and we're being totally sustainable. And in realistic terms, that's just not true. So for us, it's about all of the little, maybe the unsexy, unattractive things that we need to improve, right? Because it's really easy to talk about all the big stuff. Of course, yes, we're running with electric fuels, but how are we electric cars? How are we fueling our electric cars? If we bring generators to the circuit, for us, that's not interesting, because that's not the way we want to do things sustainably. We work on racetracks, so we're really in a great position to bring renewable sources of energy in terms of what do we eat on track? Is there options for plant-based food? Do we bring a bunch of plastic on track? What about tires? What can we do there? So we find that there's a lot of little nuances and details that we want to focus on in 2022 that are maybe not the most exciting stories. Another thing that we think is really important for us is to make sure we race fairly locally. So our series is European, so we can travel everywhere without flying. We will ultimately race on other continents as well, but they will always be regional series. So we're not shipping our cars all around the world or flying all around the world with our cars. So there's a lot of things that we think that we can do to make a difference, and a lot of things that we're not doing well yet, and nobody in the sport is doing well yet. And our approach is to be pretty honest about that and say, hey, look, we're not the experts at this thing. How can you come and help us? What is your solution? Whether it's putting recycled materials into the body parts of the car, which is things we're looking at, or making our hospitality more sustainable. For sure, we're not perfect. None of us are. So my feeling is let's solve these problems together and really kind of crowdsource these issues to make our sport better.
That's a wonderful approach. I appreciate the holistic view of taking a look at where you're good and where you have work to do. So I really appreciate that sharing. James, how about you?
Sorry, guys. May I add something? Because I must have missed part of the question. Sorry, James, to jump in. I was trying to fix this freezing light in my face, but I don't know actually how to handle it. I'm very sorry. I must have missed the part about the materials, of course. Sorry again to jump in, but I would like to add something. It is a really crucial part, as we all know, all the guys that are here, and for sure everybody watching us at the moment. So I just would like to clarify, Wes is pretty much focused on the materials, and as we are constantly search for recyclable materials for the event production, as Beth just said, everyone brings a lot of plastic. We try to reduce this plastic to the maximum, and also for the racetrack setup, because we do set up the track ourselves. So for example, we simply replace plastic poles with wood poles. Of course, these are heavier and more expensive, and they're more tricky to handle, but definitely much better for the environment and for being part of the green that we are. Of course, we are already in there, as I said before. So definitely this is one big part. The power supply, as we all know, it's a crucial part. We try to have green power as we can, and the goal is to have it 100% one day. It's not viable yet, it's not feasible, but we're working on it. And last but not least, I would like to mention the racetrack maintenance, because we do build up tracks, and there's a lot of work and human work behind that. So it is very important for West to keep these trails usable for the local people, for cyclists. So definitely very much important to clean them up, and as a main goal, to leave them even better than we found them, at our arrival. That's it. Thanks.
Yeah, wonderful. Thank you for jumping in. That's a great approach as well. So thank you very much for sharing. All right, James, your turn.
Thanks, Bill. And certainly I agree with Beth. I think the key is to be honest and transparent about our approach. We're not perfect in everything we do. I don't think any championship can stand there and say that, but we do our best to create a platform to talk about positive change. And to do that, I think we try and balance a combination of the macro approach and the micro. In terms of the macro, when we formed Extreme E, we took a step back and thought, okay, number of events. Do we need 22 events a year to make the same impact? No. So reduce the number of events, but increase the quality of those events and really maximize the exposure around each location. And certainly, as Valentina said, leave each location in a better state than when we first arrived. So obviously, once we've established, say, a calendar of 5 events, then we looked at fans. Do we need fans at our events? We all know that the biggest impact is not from the motorsports itself, or even the catering for the people on site who are producing the event or competing in it. It's actually the travel by thousands or even hundreds of thousands of fans to each location, mainly via air freight. So our approach is to say, right, we won't have fans at events. It's more of a almost like a film set. And really the exposure that we create is through our global broadcast and social media platforms. And that's the way that we can best put forward our message. And then as similar to, as Beth said, we don't use air freight. So we have the ship, the St. Helena, which transports our equipment from race to race. Therefore, our carbon emissions are greatly reduced, perhaps compared to other similar series. And then the approach of not using single-use materials, plastics on site is a key one for us. So actually, we started it in Greenland last year. We ask everyone on site, whether you're Carlos Sainz, famous driver, or our presenters, our broadcast partners, or our labourers, to bring their own plate, fork, cup, spoon, and wash it up themselves as well. So it's a small initiative, but it saves tens of thousands of single items of waste per day on site, which we found to work really well. And then, as also Beth and Valentina said, thinking about the food that's consumed on site. So we've partnered with Neat Burger, for example, to create plant-based menus for us, and then also to supplement that using food and drinks from the local area as best we can. So there's some of the approaches we take, and for us at Extremely, it's certainly a core pillar of our approach to putting on events.
Perfect. I appreciably dialed into what you said about the fans' contribution. You know, we love our fans. You know, we wouldn't be anything without the fans. But it's specifically interesting how, if you've ever been around a post event and the post cleanup, there's a lot to clean up, and you know, that's a good way to kind of handle it, is to move towards more of a virtual platform. So appreciate those insights as well. Great. Well, cool. Good kickoff on the first question. Let's dive right into the second one. So the next question I have prepared is, you know, some critics would argue that sustainability is quite possibly an unrealistic target because we have a high rate of consumption of precious resources. We have progressed effects of climate change, you know, and a lot of the naysayers come pretty strong with those types of counter arguments. But how can we continue to make the efforts and goals of sustainability clear and present for our viewers? But honestly, how can we make it fun? I'm really, really curious about how we can do that. So, Valentina, what are your general thoughts on that?
Well, thanks, Bill. Actually, our position at WES is not exactly to make it fun, not really. Maybe it's more like the focus on to make it accessible and understandable and reasonable to our target audience. So definitely, yes, we can use sports to spread the word. We can use ambassadors, we can use the athletes. And I think that our mission overall is not only to make it fun, but to make it credible, reliable, you know, to act like having an impact and act like an example to others. And through these activities and these initiatives also to spread the words to even a wider target audience. So to deliver a clear message and go ahead to this direction. Then of course, the goal for racing is to be fun, but this is a second part of the story in our view.
That's a very strong response. That's very good. You're absolutely right. I agree with you. I mean, the fun comes naturally with the event, but you got to tackle the reality first. So I appreciate that. Great. Beth, what about you? Did you get it? Did you get the question? Would you like me to repeat it, or how are you doing? All right, we'll pause. We'll come back to Beth again. Khalil, how are you? What are your thoughts?
Yeah, I mean, we try to, from our side, basically, we go to the middle of city center, we come to the fans, so we have to basically, in the same time, entertain them and educate them. So we are creating a lot of educational, sustainable programs where people are having fun, watching a race. Our races are different from others, so we are short heats. So you have a race of 5 minutes, then you have a 10 minutes break, you have to do something. And everything you do has to be sustainable. So in the same time, then that you are standing around, you watch a race, you have the adrenaline high, then you turn around, you have something else to do. But at the same time, what we're trying to do is entertain and give information at the same time. So with kids, for example, we are doing a lot of educational programs where they come with their parents, they have fun, they watch the race, they meet the riders, they watch the racing, they know more about micromobility, which is a new mobility coming to every city, how to use electric scooter in a sustainable way, because sustainability is not only green, it's about everything, how to be sustainable in every single way. A championship, a sustainable championship, we're not only talking about how we're gonna help to work on our mission of our green mission only. The sustainable sport also has to be accessible. Sustainable sport, every person included in the sport, or every person being part of this event has to play a part of sustainability, from being green up to maybe one day being one of our riders in the sport. So yeah, we have a lot of programs for our riders programs. We have a lot of programs from our fans when they come on the events. But basically the short question is, we are creating some, or let's say we are combining fun information with education at the same time for everyone, for all our fans, basically.
Yeah, that engagement's key. You're bringing forth the truism of the racing series and what goes into it, also engaging people to be participants in it.
Yeah, and exactly same as Beth and James said, no one is perfect. We will never be perfect. We are here to keep pushing each other and be better. But if we can, through our fans and through our riders and ourselves, push for a greater value and push people and push our fans and push ourselves always to a better, this is how the world will become better, basically. We just always have to be creative and push each other.
Yeah, absolutely, in a friendly way, just like racing. It's another form of racing, and that battle's constant. But we're here together. I appreciate that. Great. We'll go to James. James, what are your thoughts?
Sure. I think the racing side of Extreme E is the fun. That's the real core entertainment. But just as important are the legacy programs that we run in conjunction with each race. So when we go to a location, we identify a good cause or initiative that really needs our support. So in frank terms, financial support from Extreme E and our partners, but then also engagement from our scientists, our drivers even, in projects on the ground where we can really make a difference, whether that's educating people on the ground in terms of how to approach single-use plastics, or whether that is actually making a change, such as assisting with a planting of mangroves in Senegal, for example. So we then capture that, and because we're more of a broadcast-focused product rather than at-event, fan-attended product, we create clips around the entertainment, around the racing, which educates and engages the viewers in those legacy programs and tells the story of the challenges that are being faced in a location, but then the solutions that are being used to combat those challenges.
That's wonderful. Bringing it back home to the local location. That's an important thing I think a lot of events miss, is what's going on in the own backyard of the event. So that's a wonderful perspective. Great. Beth, are you with us? How are you doing? You come off mute. Do you want to give a shot to the question? How's that connection next to the paddock there?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Not great. It was great until we went live, and now it's terrible. So I think I'm doomed a little bit. So I'll keep it pretty quick. But in terms of making it fun from our side, obviously we're an entry-level series. So for us, it's about being as accessible as possible. That is an approach that we take when it comes to our drivers. Obviously for us, we welcome drivers of any age, diversity, nationality, creed, whatever. But there's obviously a particular focus on drivers coming out of karting or young drivers, because we're really the start of a career for a lot of drivers. So for us, it's really important to make electric an appealing and exciting and kind of career-driven opportunity for these drivers, where they can see, hey, if I race here, then I get great sponsorship in from companies that like what we're doing, and then I can go to the top. So there's that angle from the drivers. Also, when it comes to our engineers and our team, making it as accessible as possible so that people can actually get involved with these electric race cars, and it's not just something aspirational. Opening up things like a racing school so that people that are enthusiasts or corporate people can come and try out the car and, you know, get close to an electric race car, get behind the wheel. That's stuff that's not really done yet because it's so new. And then for fans, we've committed to make sure that all of our races are always streamed online for free. There's no paywalls for us because we want it to be accessible for everybody. And there's a lot of other things we can do with the fact that the car's electric and software driven, that we can make the car accessible in terms of if people have different needs for driving, maybe it's maybe they want more hand paddles because they're not able to use their legs to drive, or they have a different ability that means that they need to use the car in a different way. Because we're electric and software based, there's so many cool things we can do like that around that. So I think for us, the fun side becomes part of enabling people to take part and actually feel really involved in the sport. So that's our kind of approach to that.
That's wonderful. You know, there's one thing that I think all of you are saying, all of us in the panel, is engagement is key, right? Education through engagement, through tactile ownership of their involvement, your fan base's involvement into what you're doing and what it really means. So that is an awesome connection that everybody on this panel shares. So I think everybody's in for a good experience as the racing events continue to grow and expand into further horizons. So great, wonderful, awesome question. So let's take another question here. We have a couple coming in from our audience here, but we'll do those after. So let's dive right into this next one, which is, you know, we're talking about the fun, we're talking about the challenges, if you will, of trying to keep awareness, you know, clear and present. But what do you see as the main specific challenges in the motorsports sector, which the road to sustainability is going to take much longer? So, for example, do you see opportunities in traditional combustion engine technologies which are unique compared to those that are faced in zero emissions technologies? Can you share a bit? Do you have any similarities that you're observing in those technology advancements? Let's go through in the same order. Valentina, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, thanks, Bill. Actually, I think Wes's case is a bit different from those of motorsports, because clearly I didn't make any proper introduction before. Sorry for that, but in a few words, this is a knee cycling series. So we're talking about cycling and with an addition of a motor. So something, let's say the other way around compared to motorsports, if we take up the petrol heads and the petrol smell and whatever, and add it to, you know, add a green electric motor. So in our case, I think it's a bit different, half and half. For example, with e-bicycles, of course, are not replacing traditional engines on the traditional push bikes because they have no motor. But in the meantime, let's say, however, they are replacing in some cases, motorbikes, and they are replacing scooters, and they're replacing also even vehicles, cars. So that's a completely different point of view in our case, I believe. So we saw that it was booming, for example, during the pandemic, and still it is in the market. The e-bikes market was like in a huge situation, completely crazy compared to other industries. So yes, there are similarities by an end, but there are more than this. There are clear opportunities for e-bikes, I believe, in this situation, in this moment. So we are witnessing that. And also, I think in the near future, the usability and the flexibility of these kind of vehicles, we'll see a lot of traditional push bikes, so the traditional ones in this case, to be replaced, because they to be replaced by e-bikes, because they do represent clear mobility evolution and a next step in the urban mobility, for example, but not only, also for tourism or for every kind of mobility in general.
Wonderful. Yeah, that's a great perspective. It's not all just internal combustion engine versus zero emissions. You're right. There are other modes of transportation, and what you're demonstrating through racing is absolutely critical to showcase that there are own unique challenges as well. So
yeah, probably we do not make happy the purists, you know, the cyclists, because we actually add in something to something that used to have any. But as I said, it's the other way around, but it's still a very interesting process that we are witnessing. So we keep keeping an eye on it.
Yeah, that's wonderful. It's an improvement angle, which is great. It's making your experience even better from what you know.
Absolutely.
So. Wonderful. Beth, you want to give it a shot? What do you see as the main challenges?
Yeah. Honestly, in motorsport, and it's probably as Valentina said, it's a little bit different, but I think the biggest challenge, it's the same when it comes to the purists, it's mindset, and that's really honestly a big problem. But people need to understand that if we love motorsport. If we love our sport and we want to keep it going, then it needs to maintain industry relevance and it needs to stay ahead of the industry. I mean, traditionally motorsport, it's always been the catwalk for cars, right? That's how it works in fashion and that's how it works in motorsport. And that's the way I always explain it to my friends that don't really understand motorsport. We need to be a few steps ahead of the industry. And right now, the way the world is and the way the industry is, that's looking pretty electric, right? So if these people who are absolutely against it and terrified of it and don't want to see it happening, don't ever embrace it, then what's going to happen is our sport's going to become less relevant to the road. And if our sport becomes less relevant, industry is going to put less money in it. And if industry puts less money in it, then we lose the thing that we love. So it's tough. And I understand that if people are used to things being traditional and the way they are, and you make a change, that it's difficult. But I think there's a new wave of people coming into the sport, like all the people on this panel. Everybody on this panel, I'm sure, is pioneering all of you. So I think that there's a lot of exciting things coming. And if people are not going to get on board with the change, then they're going to miss out and we're going to lose something that we're all passionate about. So mindset, that's the biggest change that we have to overcome. And it's tough.
Yeah, so true, so true. I do want to shout out to our viewers. If you haven't had a chance to expose yourself to an electric experience, take the chance, take the opportunity wherever you can, whether it's a test drive, whether it's coming to these events, participating in the level of engagement that our panelists are talking about. But absolutely agree. Come on in, the water's fine. It's a wonderful experience to go electric. So Khalil, let's switch to you. What do you think?
Yeah, I mean, listen, I think life is a challenge because everything is a challenge nowadays. I have to agree with Valentina and Beth. From the technology side, I think we are a new sport for us. It's not, I don't always call it a new racing series because we are kind of developing a new sport from every side. Who are our riders? What is electric scooter racing? And people, when we launch electric scooter racing, people are like, what on earth are you doing? Those are dangerous on our pavement. But the reason we launch it is that to be relevant, to help the sector. Like, look at what motorsport or what car racing did in the industry of electric scooters today are where cars used to be in 1910. It's a sea of opportunity. I don't like seeing it as a challenge. It is a challenge, but it's also a sea of opportunities, how to develop this new sector, how to develop safety, infrastructure, legislation, everything. And the only way to develop something like that is by racing it. I mean, we learned so much. Today, you go on a street, you cannot ride a scooter when it's wet. We developed a wet tire to help the users. Scooters, maybe they shouldn't be ridden without helmet. Yes or no, we have the answers because we are the lab today to develop everything around that. So I think challenges are there. Also, when we talk technology, for example, when we started our first prototype, there were no hub motors. And I think Valentina probably, they would know about this problem. There are no motors for these little machines. So we had to develop our own motors because there was only one manufacturer of hub motors around all Europe, no one else, or one in China. So it was so hard to go into that. But now you can see with the industry moving, everybody using, well, a lot of people are moving into electric scooters. The new generation want this. We developed so much into the sport, which we're going to make it relevant for everyday's user. And this is why we exist. I mean, it's a challenge. We want to convince cities why we exist. A lot of cities embrace us. I could see it, but a lot of cities think like we are crazy. We are encouraging speed, but yes, without speed, you cannot develop safety. We saw this in car racing, and this is what we're doing electric scooter. And on top of that, the biggest challenge, if you ask me for motorsport, I come from a motorsport background. I came from a country or a whole region, Middle East. We didn't have one racing circuit back in 2004. It was the first race. So I started racing in 2000 or 99. We had no circuits. I didn't know what to do. It's not accessible. So accessibility is very important. We take the sport to people. We bring it to the city centers. We open our own hubs. So whoever wants to try, we want to make it accessible. And if I am a kid today on a push scooter, technology is taking you where you are 7 years old, you're going to use electric scooter. So how to use it safely, where to use it, where I learn how to use it. We need to open those centers for them to be safe, because we all agree tomorrow, or the world of tomorrow, wants a safe rider. So what we are working on people, develop the safety through kids, through programs where if you develop a safe rider, you have a safe environment and safe infrastructure. So there is a lot of challenges, I would say.
Yeah, that's a great, again, a holistic approach and thought process. It's, if I may summarize, essentially you're creating that technical fostering zone where you're able to test the theories, you're able to, again, engagement is the topic that we continue to bring up. I do have an opinion though. I mean, based in Long Beach, Los Angeles, we have a lot of micromobility users, and I'm pretty sure that they need to wear a helmet out here, at least in LA. So I'm sure that might be something that comes around, but it's wonderful. So yeah, well, thank you for your perspectives. Great. All right, James, just let's toss it over to you. I mean, if anybody on this panel, I think you throw challenges at the technology. Looking at your tenders for technology, you're pushing those boundaries, but would love to hear more about where you think some of the challenges really exist.
For sure, we are. And to your point in the question about whether there are similarities between internal combustion engine motorsports and electric or even hydrogen motorsports, I think there are similarities. Tires, all cars, no matter how they are powered, run on tires, and tire technology obviously has developed a lot over the years, but really the tires and the materials used are quite similar. I think to draw on the developments we're making, our founding partner, Continental Tire, our closest partner, has put a huge amount of effort recently into improving tire technology and the materials they use. So we have at least, I think, 60 plastic bottles reused and recycled and put into each Extreme E tire. And I think that is something that we will continue to work with Continental, our partner, to improve year on year. And certainly we push them, the teams push us to ensure they're racing on the greenest tire possible. And then you roll that out to other parts of the car, whether that's a suspension. And we're now working on Fox with Fox, our new partner, and how we can improve the approach to testing and to making the suspension. Right through to the cables used. How do we make every part of the car sustainable, not just the either the fuel cell or the battery, that kind of thing.
Wonderful. Yeah, we don't think about it too much about the tires, but they play a huge role. Obviously, I mean, we do see them changed a lot, and through major races. But yeah, great perspectives on how there's some similarities of challenge between both types of racing series. So great. So let's take a quick question from the audience. We have one that's coming in from Elysium Racing. It's a pretty good one. So this question is, how can veteran drivers in top electric series support and encourage young drivers to go electric in their racing career? So I think this plays well in the topic of engagement, like we said. So we'll open it up to the overall panel. If somebody wants to dive in on that question, please feel free.
Sure, I'm happy to take this one, Bill, if that's okay. I think it's the responsibility of drivers and teams and us as a championship to ensure that we engage with and encourage young drivers as best we can. So whether that's through social media, educating, but also obviously making it fun. As a championship, we ran a rookie event as part of our Italian race at the back end of last year, where we welcomed a number of young drivers without contracts to the paddock. They were mentored by a team, and then they were able to have some testing time in the car. So, for example, that's an area where you can give real seat time to these potential drivers coming through. But then, it doesn't just necessarily need to be drivers. How do we encourage young mechanics, engineers to come through? And again, that's through programs of recruiting in the right areas, whether that's young people, whether that's from minority groups. I think there's a responsibility to branch out to a whole range in society to ensure that motorsports and continues, as Khalil said. It really is the lab for the automobile industry going forwards, and it's crucial we get those young people coming through.
That's super exciting. Anybody else on the panel would like to?
Yeah, I'll jump in, because obviously this is something really important for us. I think one of the things is obviously to show a level of success within electric motorsport, a little bit obvious, but for young drivers, particularly teens, if they're seeing a successful driver, whether they're racing in Formula One, touring cars, or electric cars, if they're having a successful career and a driver is thinking about the long-term implications of that seat, not just for this year, but for the next year and the year after. Are they going to be a paid driver? Are they going to be a works driver? They need to see that there's progression and opportunity and success within that pathway, which is something that we are now able to say is developed within electric racing. And then to get that general engagement between people that have been in the sport for a while and empower people and welcome people to be part of the paddock. And that's a little bit what James is saying as well. It goes beyond just drivers. It needs to be about mechanics. It needs to be like the STEM education subjects in school. How do we engage? How do we bring more people in there? And it's a great example where you see STEM engagement in school. You see a lot of young girls participating in STEM engagement. And then typically after university in the industry, it's only about 3% women working in the industry. So where do we lose these women? They're studying it when they're young, they're enthusiastic, but somewhere along the line, they're dropping off. So this is where I think older veterans and more experienced people need to make an environment that is inclusive and welcoming for people so that we don't have people drop off and say, okay, there's an opportunity over there that, you know, where I see more people that are like me, I should go over here. We need to say, no, you can come here. There's space for you. So it's about showing career progression and success, but also empowering people to take a role and to find their space in where they're passionate in.
Yeah, what a beautiful dynamic where we're at right now, where we can actually reach from the series downward and engage to our fan base and actually educate and involve, you know, the next generation. It's just a great time to be in racing. So.
Yeah, I like what Beth just mentioned about where we lose these women. And this, for us, an e-scooter, obviously they are only electric scooters, so they are not scooters. So if you want to race electric scooters, it has to be electric. But we, from our perspective, we are a new series, and we are not a new motorsport series. We are a new sport. So we could be brave. And as you could see from our riders lineup, if we wanted to let teams go choose riders without proper testing and etc., we could end up, I think, with some two-wheel riders riding only, and nobody tried it. So we opened it up to different athletes from other sports. We invited them to come test it. We made sure we are a sustainable sport from the one. They are paid to do the sport, so they are all under contract to be paid racing electric scooter racing. But what we did, we invited athletes because we could see from day one the dynamic of standing on the scooter is so agile, and you can see everybody expected is a two wheels racing, but electric scooter are two wheels today. They could be one wheel tomorrow. They could be four wheels or three wheels later on. So you could see people coming from balance sport are very, very good at it. So we ended up with snowboarders faster than MotoGP riders. And this is why we have this mix of girls and guys coming from different sports. And I think so far from all our testing, the fastest are two girls, which shows if we build our sport from day one in the correct way, if those local hero or the global heroes we are bringing to the sport to be our ambassadors, I would love to see my 7-year-old daughter looking at Jordan or any girl racing and be wanting to be her. And this is what we were brave, and we are lucky to start from zero. We are building a sport from top to down. It's much easier from building from down to top. And if we have the base from top, well, this is why our grassroots model is only coming after we start racing the World Championship, and we announce it in a few weeks.
Yeah, wonderful. I myself have a 7-year-old daughter as well, and I haven't even thought about her future in motorsport, but she's already better than me in any motorsport video game that we own. So she's maybe got a future there. But I love what you're doing.
For her next Sunday on TV. She should watch it.
Well, yeah, I'll get her involved. Thank you. Wonderful. Valentina, did you have any opinions? Do you want to share any thoughts about generally this, how we engage?
Thanks, Bill. Actually, I do agree with all the entire panel here. It's interesting because any contribution gives us 3 or 4 more insight to discuss about, and it would take more hours, and probably this will be matters to go through into another meeting in the future. First of all, women and youngsters, so the two things go together. We are working hard to make women in e-cycling having the same exposure and rewarding that men have, and the same thing that Extreme is doing. So it's a tough path, and we're glad to do so. We're putting a lot of effort, both from this sporting point of view, than from the media perspective. And stepping back to the youngster, again, I'm probably witnessing here the other way around position, the other perspective of the conversation. As you probably know, there is a bit of a diffuse opinion about e-bikes being for elderly people, and actually being West and UCI workup, so a proper workup sanctioned by the governing body of cycling, of world cycling, we are trying to show and prove that this is definitely not true. And we see, first of all, our effort is in designing very tough tracks, so to make it very technical and difficult, so to show that these are not for granny or for elderly guys that cannot access the traditional push bike anymore. Second, it is very interesting to see the youngster movement behind it, because if you ask a 23, 25, 27 years old rider coming from traditional cycling and getting to e-bikes over the last couple of years, if you ask the question and what do you think about e-biking? If you were a teenager now, would you pick up an e-bike instead of a push bike? They all say yes, definitely. I will start with an e-bike because it's more challenging, it's more technical, so there's much more athlete part in this. Despite of the common opinion, is like we're not talking about giving just more speed because we have a motor on a chassis. It's definitely not like that. It's much more of the combining the two things, the man and the machine. So here comes the motorsport part, and definitely it is also more challenging for youngster approaching the sport, because they definitely will have a bigger opportunity. They don't have to face hundreds and hundreds of people already practicing this sport at a high level, at a world level. So probably it's also more motivating for them to try to challenge themselves in these new disciplines.
Yeah, there definitely is a wave of technology disruption that's causing a change of face, if you will, and especially in the youth, like you mentioned, just wanting to be engaged and trying out these technologies, but also open to it. That is huge.
Because there's technology in it, and the young generations are definitely closer to technology than my generation or the previous ones.
Yeah, that's amazing. Wonderful.
It's more sexy, they say.
Yeah, absolutely. And yeah, all the best. I mean, it's all coming to the same sort of conclusion for everybody on this panel. Is obviously what our future is really in the growing viewership of younger generations, of new entrants that are really trying to think with different perspectives. So what a great way to round out for our last question here. So I'm going to ask a question that I think I know the answer to, but please, prove me wrong here. What disruptive zero emissions technologies or technology improvements are you most excited to see in the near term? And how could that revolutionize your own respective series opportunities? I predict, and I could be totally wrong here, but I predict everybody's going to say something about the battery, how much they want the battery to do.
Guess why?
Now versus later. Yeah. So go ahead and lead us off, Valentina. What do you think?
Yeah, sure. Of course, battery and tires that we mentioned before probably are on top of the list. Many components and vital elements of an e-bike, but also of traditional bikes in this case, need to be part of a revolution in terms of their disposal. Clearly, batteries and tires again are the biggest enemies, we say. So yeah, we deeply wish to see an important improvement in this activity, in their disposal, which would definitely make the difference, and we hope to witness that soon. It's clearly something that is not only up to us, it's not only up to the manufacturers, not only up to the event organizer. I think it's looking at the bigger picture, it must be something in the hands of the governments at the global level, and government and political intention and ideas and decision needs to make the difference in this path. So yeah, let's say it will help the entire community, the e-community, the e-world, to become stronger and more credible. I think we need it. We deserve it by hand, and we definitely need it. So yeah, this requires a huge commitment from on top. So yeah, as an event organizer, of course, the goal is to become able to also generate power, green power, sustainable power. But again, I think the battery point and also the tires are crucial. And not only as an organizer, but of course also as a as a person, as a citizen, I would like to see this applicable to the daily life, to our routine, and this, the chance to auto-generate, self-generate power enough to face whatever activity you have to face in a day. But of course, again, it's up to other decision makers, which is who are not us. And it depends, it may change a lot from country to country. Of course, there are more attention and skill and experienced countries and focused countries in doing this. The country I come from, which is Italy, it is not yet. While, for example, on the other hand, the Principality of Monaco, which is a small country and where West is based, so our home is definitely more paying much more attention and much more keen on the electric development and the diffusion of the electric vehicles, with infrastructure, with support, with government support in terms of resources, financial resources. And there's a huge difference between countries, and I think it's a gap we have to fill in somehow.
Yeah, that's a great thought process. It does change, just doesn't come from bottom; it comes from top as well, and you have to have partners even at the the world level to be able to enable those changes. So, great shouts to those organizations, those countries that are actually making moves in that direction. So appreciate that. Beth, what about you? Is it battery? Is it not battery? Prove me wrong.
Yeah, you know what? I'll be a bit different and not go down that route. I mean, to be honest, for what we're doing, because we aim to create an electric version of a car that was already out there in combustion form. And what they were doing with the Japanese Formula chassis, they weren't running long races. That's not normal for a Formula 4 car. So actually for us, a big battery, it was never necessary. So we've never had an issue with battery size and weight. We run with a 25 kilowatt hour battery, and that's all we need. Obviously, when it comes to lightness and the materials inside, there's loads of developments that are going to happen there. But maybe a slightly different angle to bring some variety of the panel. A really big, important focus for us is the software side of things. So for us, we have made our cars completely connected. So it's called the Internet of Things. You might have had that around. But so basically, every single one of our cars is its own Wi-Fi hub. And I'm not the most IT literate person, so if I butcher this explanation, then I'm really sorry. But basically, it means that we have live data on everything going on all of the time. That's all synced in with things going on like the weather, the tires that we've got on the car, all of that. And because of that, we're able to build a complete picture of the environment and what's going on in the car. At the moment, we're using that in the way of giving fans engagement by being able to see what's happening, giving the driver information, and giving our data engineers information to work with, which helps make the car more safe and more efficient. But there's pretty much no end to what we can do with that data and the scope of what we can collect. So, this is our first year as a series, but we think for us as a series focused on affordability and accessibility and efficiency, there's more amazing things that we can do with data, with all of these amazing things happening within the world of AI, with machine learning, that the machine can start to tell us, how can we be more efficient? Where are we losing energy? And so, yes, of course, it's super important that we have all of these battery developments, storage, bringing power to circuits, trucks that can do amazing long journeys and be all electric, all of that good stuff, electric planes. But for us, we're trying to look at things more. We're trying to hack the system, I guess, a little bit and look at things from a software side. And what's happening on that front is so exciting. You're almost looking at autonomous capabilities, but the driver is there and receiving the information and still driving the car. So I think it's a really exciting thing that's going to develop over the next few years and a big focus for us.
Perfect. You took a page right out of the Evolectric playbook, and there's similarities in what we're doing with our organization and data fed operations, data fed management, whatnot. So wonderful. We're wrapping up on time here, so let's make sure we get enough time for Khalil and James. So Khalil, if you don't mind.
Yeah, I mean, Beth, I think nailed it down with Valentina. I cannot add more. Battery, tires, but also Web3 nowadays is something we look at massively. Software technology, sensors. Also, again, I keep saying it probably, but it's a new sector for us. Sky is the limit by trying things. We are trying a lot virtually. We built our own electric. We call it the electric city, but it's a city. Basically, we don't call it the metaverse, but it's like a virtual city where we are trying so much on it. Even we are trying with our own technology from racing, how the scooter slows down into a slow zone by itself. So if it sees a person next to it, a lot of people cannot hear the scooters coming, some technology. So we can try so much virtually and bring it to everyday's life. So yeah, I mean, we have a lot of things coming on, but we take advantage of all the technology we have today. We are very lucky, I think, in the modern day where we live, how much is coming. Every day there is something new. I take advantage of that and try to make it relevant for our sector.
Absolutely. What a time to be alive in racing, right?
Exactly.
James, what about you?
Well, obviously we're Extreme E, and we've shown that electric certainly has a place in the off-road world for both motorsports and also for road cars. But the next big project for us is Extreme H. So our intention is to have hydrogen racing at our events from 2024. So at each event location, we'll have Extreme E and Extreme H racing on the same or very similar courses over the same weekends. And that's a pretty big shift for us. You know, we believe both technologies have a place in motorsports and road cars, and we look forward to showcasing the hydrogen technology alongside electric. Obviously, there are lots of challenges that we're working through at the moment with our car partner Spark, but there are already some OEMs out there who are running their R&D projects around hydrogen. There are other potential suppliers for our hydrogen fuel cells. So yeah, we're really excited about it, and it marks a big shift for us as an organization.
Yeah, super excited to hear more about Extreme H. I know we got some things coming up to talk about there. So great little preview on what's coming. Appreciate your insights. Everybody, as we kind of wrap up this first panel, really, really thankful for your time, your insights. We've got a lot of engagement from the comment section. People are very excited about the insightful conversation. So thank you for your time. Would love to wrap on the participation of the first panel of the day. Again, the topic is 2022, the year of sustainability in motorsports. Specifically to our audience and viewers, if you enjoyed the panel, you're excited about what's coming next, please support our panelists by following the leaders and their organizations and their racing series. Stay involved, get your hands on product if you can, come to these events if you can, reach out. The layers of communication gap are reducing as technology increases. You can get involved, you can get engaged. And if you want to see this interview in the future, you can watch and replay it on the Green Racing News YouTube page. So I would like to just thank everybody on behalf of the organizations for their time. Valentina, Beth, Khalil, James, thank you for joining us for this exciting summit. And everybody watching, stick around for more exciting presentations and panels. Thank you again.
Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Thanks, everyone.
Welcome, everyone. We are truly excited to have this conversation today, having you in this platform again, Green Racing News, the platform where you can see and learn more about and share more news about the sustainability of racing and esports. And today we have a really good, interesting person to talk about, Julia. Julia, welcome.
Thank you very much, Juan. It's a pleasure to be here.
Absolutely. So, you know, e-racing and Formula E has been taking really bold steps into, making this not a fashion, but something that is truly in our veins. It runs in our veins, and we are strong believers about what we are doing. From our companies, DHL, it's really a strong sponsor of, innovations. But Formula E, what further steps, guys, are you taking in making this grid and cars ever greener? You know, there is a lot of debate, you know, those conflicts lately about fossil fuels. There is no better time than today to talk about this. What is the event and the launch of Gen 3 making to make this an even greener grid and cars? Can you tell us a little bit more about that?
So I think what's unique about Formula E is that we were really created with a purpose at the heart of the championship. It's not that the world needed another racing series. The world needed a racing series that would really help us advance electrification on our streets, because we have a wider challenge, which is mobility and climate change, all the emissions that mobility is causing, in the world. So Formula E was here initially to really be that platform to advance the technology around electric vehicles, and has become more widely the platform for all companies that are innovative and want to test their innovation to support us living a more sustainable lifestyle, to really test at the scale of the event and then expand on the city level, on a country level, and so on and so forth. And we use the sport to inspire the public and the fans to live and adopt this sustainable lifestyle through the vehicle, all intended, of the sport. And really that's by inspiring people and really showing that there's a bright future, that they're going to be excited. Now, we are here like now in the background because we are about to launch tomorrow the new generation of our car. And this car really is a stepping stone in terms of the motorsport industry, because this is really the pinnacle of what you can get in terms of racing, performance, but also sustainability. And that's the motto of Formula E. It's showing that racing and reason can powerfully coexist without compromise. And that's just what this car is about.
I like that word, the coexistence, because there is a transition. There is not an automatic shift into this transition. But also, as you were mentioning before, this is a platform to explore, to innovate. It's a laboratory, you know, it's a laboratory of ideas. And whomever wants to test, you know, it's hydrogen, it's electric, it's multiple platforms. You know, it's not mandatory that has to be electric, but it's the most efficient one. And when you talk about, you know, infrastructure and deployment, rapid deployment, especially if we want to accelerate this. So thanks for that. Now, it's a trend, it's a strong trend, but still we need to inspire and attract more fans, more consumers to follow your lead. What is Formula E doing? What are the bold moves beyond, you know, COVID is gone, we're moving ahead, you're launching tomorrow, but tell us more about that, how you can inspire, because it's, let me put it in this way, Formula One, the sound, the excitement, and etc. But let me tell you, I've been in a Formula E race and it's exciting. But tell us more about that inspiration. How you can bring more people? How can we create more followers and lead this race?
Well, there's two elements. The first one is that our sport is really exciting, and you've just said it, you've experienced it yourself. The fact that the drivers are such amazing competitors that keep basically overtaking each other. There's a thrill on our races that honestly it's not seen often in other racing series. So that's how you grab the attention. And that's what we've really been studying. That's through the sport that we attract the fans. And that's also thanks to the sustainability that we retain those fans. So what is interesting is that it really works as a symbiosis. You get the fans captivated, you captivate their heart, their mind, their souls through the sport. And then the sustainability element grounds them because they really want to support something that is future-facing, that is good for people and the planet. Even more when you talk about the next generation. They care even more about the sustainability credentials that the championship is carrying, but also the messaging that is being sent through what the championship is doing first house, because we have our house in order. And then we send the message on the fact that it's actually possible to live a more sustainable lifestyle, to recycle on our event, not to use plastics, to use, to eat vegetarian food, and so on and so forth.
Cool. This is my mind, it's playing with me today, but this pilot of Formula One that is promoting the Formula E now. What is his name?
Promoting Formula E. So Lucas Di Grassi was or Jean-Éric Vergne. Some of them have been Formula One drivers.
So they are strong believers in this. You know, it's a trend. It's not that, you know. So the point is, you can leave speed, you can leave acceleration, you can leave safety. You can live, these healthy habits, because it's not only about mobility and face. It's a cool ecosystem of activities. But what are those areas that you're working on the most to make it this championship more sustainable? Because you already told us, okay, habits, food, green, plastics, but what else?
Well, we work also a lot on social aspects of sustainability. It's very important for us to use the power of the championship to make sure that we contribute to build more inclusive societies. One of the best examples of that is a program that we share with DHL, which is called FIA Girls on Track. Girls on Track is all about promoting gender diversity and inclusion into the motorsport environment, which unfortunately so far is quite male dominated. And that's showing, inspiring young girls coming from diverse social backgrounds, because it's also normally an environment that is quite for wealthy people. So showing people coming from all social backgrounds that they can have a career in motorsport. They can decide to be an engineer, a mechanic, a journalist, a racing driver, of course, and many more. So what is amazing is that we take this group of hundreds more of girls and we give them a series of workshops, a bit of aerodynamics or a bit of, DHL is doing a really cool challenge on, stacking and organizing the freight within a container and so on and so forth. ABB is doing some robotics. So it's really giving them perspective of the kind of careers they can have. They also get to meet the teams and the drivers. It's one of their favorite moments because they're really in front of, the heart of what the championship is. And it's also giving them ultimately the possibility of picturing themselves in this environment. They are on track with us. And they see all the females working in this environment, in the team, in the Formula E organization. So there's no reason why, should they want to pursue a career in motorsport. And that's what really matters to us.
Love it. That's a resemantization of the word of philanthropy. It's not about doing, it's inclusion, it's society. We are this is a way of living, right? And we have been happily surprised in DHL as well about how that inclusion brings us different perspectives. And women, they bring the X factor, the angles of, in fact, we are moving our management from 60%, 70% of men to 40% of women. They bring these X factors, they are complementing and taking bold steps ahead of time, because women are more sensitive than us. And that combination of factors, LGBT inclusion, social backgrounds, different aspects, this is philanthropy. This is how I call and define philanthropy.
We strongly believe that you need to basically be a reflection of the society that you want to touch and to attract. So we want to talk to the new generation. We want to make sure that we are talking to people that care about inclusivity. So we need to be inclusive ourselves and make sure that we're going to change the landscape of the sport in which we operate. So, our new management has done a phenomenal job in terms of promoting more women into top management and leadership roles. And this is just the beginning, because diversity and inclusion is a series of considerations to take to make sure that really we have different facets, so that we're really going to reflect the society that we want to touch and we want to attract.
I'm really happy to hear that and having this conversation with you, Julia. It's back in my times when I was an F1 follower, Juan Pablo Montoya, he was a Colombian pilot, and he was flying in the belly of the freighters. Those type of efforts. You have tons of history, hundreds of history, Julia. We can stay here, entertaining our audience about that
the whole afternoon.
But let me take you now to the next step. You have publicly spoken about measuring the emissions, right? First, and then taking an appropriate and targeted action to reduce them. You cannot measure, you cannot control what you cannot measure. That's what I believe is the philosophy that you have behind. But share some insights with us, please, how it works.
So, it's very simple. We've been following the recommended approach by United Nations, the Climate Neutral Now, that's called. And what United Nations recommend is to measure, reduce, and then offset. So we've been measuring since the very beginning, first race, and all the races following for all the seasons that we've been running have been measured. With these measurements, we've understood where the impact lies. The reality is 75% of the footprint is the logistics because it's driven by the calendar. We are a traveling circus around the world. So the big battle in terms of CO2 emissions is with the freight. And we've done amazing steps with DHL. One, starting to design our calendars in a cluster way, regions by region. Two, working at multimodal approach where we don't freight everything by plane, but we use also boats and trucks and so on. And then two, using biofuels to power little by little all the different elements that make up the freight cohort in a way that we use. But what was important to us was also to make sure that we would really stick to what is, let's say, sustainable for people and the planet. So back in 2021, we were the first sport in the world to align onto climate science through the Science Based Target initiatives. And that means that we have very, very clear reduction objectives, 45% by 2030, or 5% per year since we committed to the Science Based Target. And that's a big undertaking because the reality is that our sport is likely going to grow in terms of importance. We are adding more and more races to our calendar, which testifies really the success of Formula E as a championship. But at the same time, our footprint needs to continually decrease. So we are in this basically a moment where we need to be more and more efficient. And what leads us to that is the fact that because we are always at the intersection of innovation, then we go and find those innovators in their different industries that can offer us the technologies that will enable us to grow. So human progress, but in a sustainable way. And that's exactly the mission statement of Formula E, sustainable human progress, accelerating sustainable human progress, living the lifestyle you've known more efficiently with less emissions.
I like that summary because those actions can truly reduce those emissions. But let me go a step backwards in terms of measurement, because in our experience with science-based target, there is not an homologation, there is not a standardized way of doing this globally. We share the same philosophy with science-based targets, but in our experience, you know what's the problem? The accountability. Who's going to account them and how you're going to claim those credits as well. Have you, or could you share some experiences of Formula E on that, or do you have any thoughts about it?
So, I mean, Science-Based Target is an internationally recognized initiative taking into account various, let's say, stakeholders such as CDP, World Business Council for Sustainability, and so on and so forth. So, let's say, recognized stakeholders in that field. And the commitment is that year on year, you need to basically publish your carbon emission and showcase that you're on track. On basically in line with your science-based target commitment. So this is quite clear and straightforward. There's not much to argue. Either you have the right numbers or you don't have the right numbers. What is interesting is when you get to the offsets are not considered as a reduction measure in the science-based target. So offsets are only a voluntarily, which is the whole point of carbon offsetting market, a voluntarily step that you decide to take, which is a step that we took in 2020. We were, again, the first sport in the world to achieve net zero carbon. It was very important for us to showcase that 10 years before what United Nations is recommended, we were doing it. Again, we are a young sport, probably more agile, also a young sport in terms of, backtracking all the CO2 emissions since inception. But still, the message was, if we are doing it today, then the rest of the world is able to do it. And although offsets are the last of the resource in terms of, solution, because it's not actually reducing, it's really kind of like offsetting the unavoidable. It's important also because this is a mechanism that is here to support the development of the countries that are, that have started their industrialization after. And the mechanism of this credit is that you are investing in developing countries, supporting, in our case, only renewable energy projects and generation to increase the proportion in the grid of these countries.
I really like this. It's a mechanism, it's a platform, it's a vehicle to do that. DHL is a strong supporter and investor on those type of initiatives. And when you were, and let me recall your words, this is not offsetting. This is not an excuse to compensate. This is insetting, right? As you were talking before, sustainable fuels. Those type are literally hitting those. When DHL was investing more than 250 million on those projects in offsetting, 0.2% went straight to the transportation. If we, as a logistics company, wants to reduce our footprint, our carbon footprint, that is not going to be, it's not going to help us to achieve zero emission by 2050. So as you were saying, let's make it directly a direct impact. And that is why we are in setting. And the reason why I was talking before about the measurement is because we realized that science-based target, I mean, the words, it tells itself, it's scientific. This is not a speculation, right? So I'm happy that you are leading by example. I'm happy that DHL is behind that type of initiative, not only DHL, but big companies. So this is not an effort of one or two. You started this years ago. I remember when the circuit was so small. Now you have long circuits. You know, the autonomy of the vehicle is longer and longer, right? Absolutely. So that dichotomy of, oh, no, it's not going to last, it's gone.
Absolutely.
Right?
And that's the whole point. I mean, here in Monaco, we're racing on the same track, literally the same track as F1, which a couple of years ago we were not able to because, I mean, we were worried about basically like not being able to, really give a good performance for the cars, really. So that's how fast the technology evolves. In 4 seasons, we doubled the battery capacity. Now we're looking at ultra-fast charging technology for our cars. So really, that's how we use a platform to really kill one by one all the anxiety from the consumer perspective in basically buying or using an electric vehicle.
Love it. Love it, Julia. Really, really excited about this news. I'm truly looking forward to watch the racings and hopefully meet you in any of the races in the world.
Absolutely. We need to meet at one of the events.
Excellent. Thank you very much, everyone. I hope this conversation has been insightful for you, fruitful. Hope you can get a few thoughts here to take it and implement it in your companies and your worlds and societies. So please join us, stay with us, and thank you very much. See you soon.
Extreme H is the first ever global hydrogen championship. It will show hydrogen-powered cars that will race together with Extreme E in the same weekend. The combination of batteries and hydrogen covers the future of mobility. We will produce this prototype in the next 12 months. We will then start producing the race cars, and then in parallel with the 4th season of Extreme E, we will have the 1st season of Extreme H. To decarbonize mobility, we will need a combination of technologies. Only one technology won't be able to do the whole job. We need to find compatible technologies that will solve the whole problem. And I think battery-powered cars and hydrogen cars are both part of the same big solution.
So, hello everyone, this is Andrew Pontius coming to you from the headquarters of Evolectric in Long Beach, California. I'm here with James Taylor from Extreme E. James, thanks for coming on screen again with us today.
Thank you, Andrew. It's a pleasure to be here today.
Great. And so I'm just going to launch right into this. A lot of people are hearing that the Extreme E team have decided to extend their series into hydrogen. And this is super exciting. Can you tell us just a little bit about that?
Of course, Andrew. As you say, we are doing that. From 2024, we will launch Extreme H, which we believe will be the first global major hydrogen championship, sitting alongside Extreme E at the same event locations on the same event weekends. We believe we've got a fantastic product and indeed a platform in Extreme E, and now we want to move to the next stage with Extreme H.
Absolutely. The platform has been fantastic. The locations have been fantastic, and the awareness is really increasing with this show. And I think the H extension of it is absolutely natural and fantastic. So I'll ask a question for some of the traditional race fans out there. If you've already got the hydrogen on site, you're using the hydrogen fuel cells to charge the off-road racers, and you could have made the choice to burn the hydrogen in a zero emissions ICE situation, and you could have the sound and the excitement of racing that way. What do you say to the traditional race enthusiasts who wish for that internal combustion experience? Why did you decide to bring the fuel cell onto the vehicle instead?
I think there are a few factors there, Andrew, and it's certainly a good question. I mean, firstly, there are still nitrogen emissions through the burning of of hydrogen, and that for us, that's not a consideration. We just cannot therefore go down that route. Obviously, the fuel cells have the benefit of having an EV powertrain as well, and therefore you can allow pretty effective mutualization between the two technologies. And so for the transfer to Extreme E and Extreme H, it allows us to use 95% of the same car that we're using in Extreme E and Extreme H. Therefore, there's the sharing of spare parts. There's the development of the car that's already been made in Extreme E can be transferred over very seamlessly, allowing everyone, including Spark, our car partner, us and the teams, to really focus on the fuel cell side.
Perfect. Excellent. So fuel cells, in my experience, typically don't do well with dynamic power loads. They really like to run at more of a steady state. And so racing is probably the most dynamic application you could imagine for a power source. So in most fuel cell situations, you still have a battery as a reservoir to take that power from the fuel cell and give you a place to dynamically feed it to the consumption of the motor. And also a place to put your regenerative braking. So I assume you're still going to have a battery in your hydrogen racers.
Yes, Andrew, you're correct. There certainly will still be a battery in Extreme H. I would love to be able to give you a definitive answer now in terms of the dimensions and the capacity and etc. of that battery. But that's something we're working through at the moment with Spark and the other experts that we're working with. It's a key feature for us because obviously then it determines the rest of the infrastructure of the car.
Yeah, so this is one of those examples of where a challenge of racing, being that you need a more dynamic fuel cell, could drive the invention of new technology and the advancement of that fuel cell technology so that it's even more useful for passenger cars.
I totally agree with you. Certainly you've seen right from the start of motorsports how it often leads the way in the transfer of technology over to road cars, and this is no different. I think Formula E and Alejandro Agag showed that with the development on the electric side and how that's transferred over, and how OEMs have used Formula E to both showcase that technology but also develop new technologies. We believe that through Extreme H and involving OEMs in that, we will be able to do the same.
Excellent. And so that starts to answer my next question, actually, which is that hydrogen fuel cell so far seems to be finding its home in long haul, commercial, heavy duty applications where that mass of all the batteries on the trucks could be a real downside. And the lightness of the fuel cell system and the hydrogen storage can help to make for a better application. But most of the car makers now are shying away from doing hydrogen fuel cell in passenger vehicles. So
absolutely, we do believe that hydrogen and fuel cells has a place both in motorsports and in road cars. I mean, if you look at certain OEMs at the moment, you have Toyota, Hyundai, BMW also, they're well underway with their R&D programs in relation to this. Certainly electric is prominent at the moment, but I think time will tell. And we believe both technologies have a place, not just in long haul for hydrogen, but also in everyday road car use.
Very good. So will the format of you said that it's going to be an extension of Extreme E. You said that you're going to use basically the same cars, but obviously you'll have another car that'll have the hydrogen application. But the racing format itself, will that be adapted at all, or will it be similar to the Extreme E setup?
Extreme E and Extreme H will certainly be similar and compatible because, as I said earlier, they'll be at the same event locations on the same weekend. However, we are looking to differentiate elements of Extreme H to showcase the key features of that technology. So perhaps it could be more laps for Extreme H, or even it could be a refueling halfway through a race, because as we know, with hydrogen and the fuel cell, there's a potential for a lot quicker refueling than, say, for the battery charging.
Excellent. So that would be another way to showcase one of the advantages of hydrogen, which is the speed of refueling, because you're now dealing with the gas rather than pushing electrons.
Exactly.
Excellent. Excellent. So it's 2024 is when we can look for the hydrogen racing. And just to give a plug for Extreme E, where can people tune in? Where can people stream Extreme E? I know you guys are into your second season now. So where can they plug in?
Absolutely. Well, you can plug in worldwide. I mean, we certainly maximize eyeballs on our sport, on our products. So if you go to extreme.com, you can find the full list of both broadcasters and where to view. So go there and find out in your territory, and if not, contact Extreme direct, and we're sure to help you.
Okay, very good. James, I know we have just a couple seconds left. Is there anything else that you'd like to tell the race fans out there about Extreme E or the exciting things to come?
Certainly lots of exciting things to come. We're working on the calendar for 2023 and beyond with some new locations. I think we've explored a wide range of different surfaces and environments so far, but there's certainly more to come. And also on the car side, we've got a couple of exciting announcements, including today. We announced Fox as our suspension partner. Obviously, in off-road racing, the damping side of things is pretty important. So we're delighted that Fox, the global leaders in suspension, have joined us today. So there's a lot more to come.
Fantastic news, James. Thanks so much for your time. I really enjoyed our talk. And everybody online, stay tuned. There's more to come on the Green Racing Virtual Summit. Have a great day.
Thank you, Andrew.
Thanks, James.
All right. Hi, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. You guys all have really unique backgrounds and really different, unique technologies. And so I'm really excited to hear what everybody sort of has to bring to the table in this conversation. But, just for our folks at home, to start, why don't we go around and just start with who we are, what we do, and what is kind of the major pinnacle technology that your organization is known for?
So yeah, my name is Casey Reams. I work at Romeo Power as the Director of Product Strategy. And we are a battery technology company entirely focused on manufacturing large factor battery packs for the commercial vehicle space, commercial battery electric. But the power rates and the capabilities that are needed for doing that scale down very nicely when it comes to how it might integrate for performance vehicles. So more exciting stuff to cover there.
All right. Hi, guys. My name is Koen Tonaar, and I'm from the team manager from the Forza Hydrogen race team. We're a team of students based in the Netherlands, in Delft. And what we're doing is we voluntarily work an entire year to promote hydrogen technology. And we do that by designing, building, and racing some of the fastest hydrogen race cars on the planet. That's basically what we do.
Sure, I can go next. Hi, everyone. My name is Brian Hong. I am the Chief Marketing Officer at Savini Wheels. In terms of technology, we don't have anything that's incredibly groundbreaking in terms of electric vehicles, but we like to work with a lot of different partners in the space, and we're real big advocates of the adoption of EVs, and very excited to be here today. Thank you very much for having me.
Hi, I'm David Cripps. I'm the Vice President of Engineering for RLE North America. RLE is an international company. We have somewhere in the region of 2,500 engineers that work as a subcontract primarily for the automotive industry. RLE does have a e-mobility arm now, which is called Future Motive, which all is under the umbrella of RLE. And that's basically involved in advanced powertrain, battery, sort of e-mobility, and also a fairly strong arm in ADAS.
Yeah, and my name is Sean Hazard. I'm the CEO of Hayes Automotive. A bit about me: I'm engineer by trade. I've had product and R&D, roles across various OEMs. Cut my teeth at Subaru and Karma. Consulted for BMW and Porsche and a few under some more NDAs. In 2019, I was working for an EV sports car company, and we were wondering And why is everyone using aluminum? 65 million cars a year are sold each year, and it's almost all steel and aluminum. But when you look at racing, carbon fiber has been exclusively used. It's stiffer, lighter, way better. So why has it not come to mass market EVs? And that's why pre-pandemic, a few of us gearheads really took on that challenge head on. We started Hayes Automotive in 2020. Got backed by Oxford University Alchemist Accelerator and a few investors from Silicon Valley. And our whole thesis is, how do we get carbon fiber so it's cheap enough to really get into mass market EVs? Really excited for just this discussion, because we've kind of discovered a few opportunities for building sustainability in carbon fiber, and we really think we're at the forefront of it.
Sean, that sounds great. I know I'm personally really excited to hear more about it. Well, thank you guys. So, obviously today we all know we're coming together to talk about sort of the upcoming technologies in not just automotive, but racing as well. And, it really isn't just a technical issue or anything just solely technical, right? It's human centric, right? Because this is all about just the driving experience, environmental sustainability, of course, vehicle performance, right? It's beyond just an energy problem. This is sort of an all-encompassing mobility opportunity, right? So kind of to sort of reiterate, so with environmental sustainability, vehicle performance, and then driver experience, which of these three are you individually most passionate about enhancing? And can you tell us a little bit more about why?
Well, from Romeo Power's side, I can tell you that I personally am excited about the accessibility that we'll be able to bring. The amount of work that we are putting into the mass production of battery modules and packs going into commercial electric vehicles, the big trucks and buses that are out there, we'll be able to bring performance to the battery technology and the racing scene, but yet not have it be exorbitantly priced. The performance versus price will actually be remarkably improved. And so that's going to be changing as we get more modules out there, more packs out there, and look for opportunities to integrate.
Right. Yeah, I think at Forza, we do what we do mainly, as I mentioned, purely not out of a commercial aspect, but just to promote environmental sustainability and to promote this hydrogen technology. But yeah, the way that we do that is to make it exciting again. And how do you make it exciting again? That's of course by the racing. And we are mainly focused at extracting the maximum amount of performance out of our cars. So our previous car, the Forza 8, has raced and has gotten its podium places on professional racetracks. But we're still, we're engineers from the technical university, so we are, trying to get to that next level, and we're only innovating and extracting performance. So I think that's the most important pillar for us.
Nice. I think for us, Savini, and I've just recently joined Savini. I was actually at Amazon for about 6 years, and one of the things that I got really excited about the opportunity here was it's seemingly rapid adoption, right, of EV vehicles. And I think, to Sean's point, carbon fiber is a material along with magnesium that, we're looking at with wheels. And my feeling is, a lot of the times partnerships are something that, we have opportunities to look into to further, further the adoption. Performance-wise for us, we've got configurations that offer wheels that, are lighter, that obviously help with what they call unsprung weight, on the cars, so that, there's better grip and there's better handling, things like that. But for us, it's really about, helping the distribution side and making sure that something like, carbon fiber wheels for cars would be accessible, right, to the market, because that is kind of the big hurdle, is making it affordable, right, for those folks. But yeah, that's where we are.
Okay. All sort of good points, and these are all obviously things that we're currently very active into as well. So, carbon fiber, lightweight wheels, Our primary message here certainly is how we're going to have some positive impact on the environment as opposed to a negative impact that most probably all of us have participated in over the last, I don't know how many years. And certainly electric vehicles are obviously a sort of key, or vehicles, let's say, are a key contributor to our environmental issues. I think somewhere in the region of 20% of carbon emissions are from personal vehicles. So the sooner that we get them out into the public, and as soon as we start to get more people to understand that the infrastructure, et cetera, needs to follow, and the clean power generation also needs to come with that. But there's also the execution of being able to build and develop a practical electric vehicle. Certainly range anxiety is one of the sort of primary issues that comes with an electric vehicle without having to have that massive battery. So certainly working in lightweighting materials is a huge area that we're working in. Certainly, options that give us a better power density ratio with the battery, but the problem is then we start to work with more rare earth materials. So are we better off sort of following the new trends of batteries that have less rare earth materials, such as LFP batteries, battery cell technology, which means then that puts more emphasis on the performance of the vehicle, because you're now going to have less power density in that battery pack. And I think to some extent, and this is where possibly motorsports helps as well, is we have to sort of educate the public of what an electric vehicle really is, what it really can be, and what we really should be doing. I mean, it's are all electric vehicles going to have a 500-mile range? No. Do we need 500-mile range? Absolutely not. Most people, you're lucky if you're driving 50 miles a day. So I think we all have to get a little bit more sort of practical as to how we use those daily vehicles. So that's a big part of what we're trying to help promote. That an electric vehicle needs to still be a fun vehicle. It needs to have still needs to give you that good driving experience. I personally would rather drive a car that has some decent performance. I do, and it is an electric vehicle. So it's all about getting that message out there too as well, and we're certainly trying our hardest to do that.
Yeah, and it's kind of similar to David's and Brian's points. Vehicle performance and sustainability has always been a trade-off in automotive, and for me, so right now it's really sustainability is the most exciting part. It's a big reason why I've personally worked in EVs, for nearly the last decade, and now what's really exciting right now is that consumers are really starting to ask for better sustainability. We've seen a level of transparency not being just required for OEMs, but also reaching out to the tier 1s, tier 2s across the supply chain. And one of our bold thoughts is that we think by 2027, sustainability targets like greenhouse gas emissions is going to be table stakes, just like acceleration or top speed is in the industry.
So David and Sean, actually, I kind of want to pick a little bit at your commentary for a second, because you both had some really interesting comments there, sort of about industry adoption, kind of social integration, if you will, because that's sort of in my opinion, that's kind of the human systems integration side of all this, right? It's not just about, the drivers in Formula E, it's also about the market, right? And personally, I feel like in my experience, I've seen the market in general doesn't adopt to change super well. Sometimes it does, but there's kind of that mean in the bell curve, right? So in your experience, I think it also very much depends on the technology. So in your experiences, how has industry adoption been in your experience? Has it been relatively easy? Has it been a little more challenging? What has that kind of been like for you?
Well, I mean, I can certainly attest that the industry hasn't or didn't buy into electric vehicles. We're very heavily engaged with most of the major OEMs And I think that it's no secret that, the OEMs or the traditional OEMs have been quite some distance behind, people such as Tesla and Lucid and now Rivian, who have got a number of years under their belt, certainly Tesla. And I think, yes, the buy-in from the OEMs was certainly taking some time. And I think, to be fair to them, it's because they struggled to see how it was really going to work. And I think also there are industries that are a little reluctant to get out of their comfort zone. They've obviously had great success over the years, with building the vehicles that they have. I mean, let's take Ford, for example. When you look at how successful the F-150 pickup truck is, for them to make major significant changes to that revenue stream, that's a big decision. That takes some very broad shoulders to say, hey, you know what, let's just not build the F-150 anymore, or we'll make an electric version of that, which they have now. And I think it's just because these companies are so big, and the adoption of having to change their factories, their facilities, etc., that's overwhelming, and extremely expensive. But I think now, and I think GM also have done a very good job at really taking account of the situation, and now they're taking some responsibility, right? So I think especially GM, you're starting to see a very big push from them, where they're now starting to help promote that to the public and then help that adoption. And through, if you look at almost the whole history of motor vehicles, you have to get the support of OEMs. Formula One was born out of OEMs. IndyCar was born out of OEMs. NASCAR was born out of OEMs. I mean, yes, NASCAR was originally people that were running moonshine, but, the industry was really taken over by the OEMs because race on Sunday, sell on Monday. It's all about the vehicles, and I think now you've got a very strong adoption, and, they're going to help lead that charge. That then helps promote it to the public, right? So whether that's through somebody that's going to be more interested in Cohen's, hydrogen racing team, or whether it's, the Formula E, whatever it be, or maybe even the hybrid version of Formula One. But, it does start there. Certainly it's going to get the youth most probably. Maybe the NASCAR guys are a little bit older, but, and I struggle to see how NASCAR could possibly be electric. But you have to get the OEMs behind it, and I think they are behind that now. And you'll see now. I think you'll start to see a significant ramp up in the public starting to buy in and understand. And with that OEM involvement, I think they'll start to help pass on that message about the responsibility of all of us to the environment.
Yeah, it's kind of similar points to David. When 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I was trying to sell performance EVs to Aston Martin customers and McLaren customers, and trying to convince them to drop their engine and their visceral sound for this EV, and it was really, really hard. It was not easy to say the least. But now is very different of a time, and I've been pretty lucky and fortunate to work with a number of OEMs that have been really customer obsessed and studying customers, studying what they wanted, and it's been pretty interesting to see how customer adoption has changed based on customer knowledge of the product. And 10 years ago, there's not many customers that knew that much about DC fast charging versus, or how does an EV work, and what's an inverter, and how does it fit into the puzzle. Now consumers are a lot more educated on EVs, but that I would say is still the biggest challenge. Buying an EV, maybe not for any of us on this or on listening in the panel, but it's still very intimidating for the average consumer. Where do I plug in? Where do I charge? What happens if it doesn't work? What's the warranty look like? And education is definitely, from my perspective, the biggest hurdle to get customer adoption above. It's the same reason for carbon fiber. A lot of people just don't understand why it's valuable. Is it strong? What's the difference between fiberglass and carbon fiber? Carbon fiber has the word carbon in it. Does that mean it's bad? So all these questions, they're kind of Just it's a matter of education, and it's kind of saying, hey, this is what the data says. This is why we think this is the future of performance in vehicles, and I think that's a big driver for getting the adoption curves of not just carbon fiber but EVs. To that the Bloomberg study is that it's 2040 it's 65% of cars penetration rates across the world.
That was really well said. Anyone else? Would anyone like to kind of jump in on that as well? Anything that kind of stood out to you there?
Yeah, I think for me, the one statistic, and I'm not sure if I've seen it wrong, but the one statistic that jumped out at me was that right now adoption of EVs, I think EVs are only less than 1% of the cars, right, in North America, which I think living in California, I found really surprising because it feels like you see, Teslas and electric vehicles everywhere here. But then I think you have to realize that, I think for the rest of the country and a lot of the areas, if it's less than 1%, that means that a lot of folks, right, to the points that David and Sean made, are still just right now, it's at the tip of the iceberg. So it's to me, it's one of those things when you're trying to introduce this new technology or something new that completely changes the way that consumers, right, use the things that they normally use. It does take time, and education is really critical. And they almost go hand in hand, right, with the proliferation and the distribution of these vehicles right now. You see it in the news and you see it, everywhere. A lot of potential buyers, they're scared off by what they don't know. And that is something that does need to be addressed. How do you do it? That's the open-ended question.
So Brian, I'm curious. I live in California too. Is that less than 1% applying to just the United States, or is that globally as well?
I'm sure it's probably even less than the fraction of a percent, if we're talking globally.
Right.
But what I saw, I can't remember. I'm sorry, I can't cite the source, but I just remember seeing this in passing and just remember being really surprised because I thought it was higher than that.
Well, and it's funny, right? So I know I can say from personal experience, also I live in Southern California, every other car is a Tesla. But, in California, we get to be a little spoiled in a lot of different ways, right? And I think one of them is we get some of the latest when it comes to infrastructural integration, any new technology. We tend to be one of the first kind of early adopters when it comes to all the kind of 50 states there. So it is definitely a reality check, I think, to sort of recognize that, California specifically, yes, we do have a hydrogen infrastructure that is growing. We also have a relatively strong EV infrastructure, but most of the country is far behind that.
Mm-hmm.
So it's an interesting thing to definitely keep in mind, and it kind of makes me wonder if how much of this kind of integrational challenge, how much of a challenge is it going to be? Do we see this sort of being something where internal combustion doesn't fully phase out for another, say, 50 years? Is this something, where do we kind of see this education starting, right? Is this something that starts in school where it's kind of just environmental sustainability as a bigger effort when it comes to K through 12 education? Do you think it starts more with just straight consumers who are already of driving age, and it's kind of more just pertaining to, hey, if you're buying a car, here's your options and here's what's great about them? How much of an importance is that education, do you think, to kind of fully getting the industry away from internal combustion fully?
Not to turn this into a marketing discussion, me being a non-engineer here in the group, but I think that it's a combination of factors, right? One is trial, right? The more people see or get to experience an electric vehicle, it becomes a lot less of a mystery, right? And a lot of the misconceptions get cleared up. Trial is one aspect, and obviously there's media. For better or for worse, the way that a lot of folks are influenced, today is by what they see on social media and and online. The irony is somebody like Elon Musk, who is immensely popular, right? I think he's actually done a good deal to advance, you know, the notion of EVs and making it cool, and making younger folks want to, you know, get more involved in it. My two kids, you know, my older son just turned 16, and when I asked him about cars that he might be interested in trying to drive, the first words out of his mouth was, "I want an electric vehicle if we can get one," right? Which it caught me off guard, because me being an enthusiast, I figured he would say, "Dad, can we get the Civic Type R or something like that," right? And that was not at all what he said. He wanted, you know, an electric vehicle. So yeah, I think there's that.
I think it's quite a simple point actually, but I think in the Netherlands it worked quite well. I think we're now between 3 and 4% in EVs. And yeah, it's really basic. Perhaps we're a bit of cheapskates, but the government, they took on a lot of subsidies. So when leasing a car, it was just really cheap to do so. And I think that made a lot of change in a short amount of years. So perhaps it's perhaps sometimes it's as simple as that, because it's also not the excitement, I think, of the really the combustion cars. It's not that living here in the country. So for us, that was a big incentive.
Yeah, and I mean, I think, you know, it's the numbers are always going to grow fairly slowly just because of availability. You know, I mean, you know, most areas you're not going to see an electric vehicle because they're physically not available. You know, California, you know, obviously Teslas are made there. You know, California as a state is most probably the most aggressive state in this country that's pushing for, you know, for you know, clean power electric vehicles. I mean, they actually have some pretty draconian rules coming up where, you know, all vehicles are going to have to be electric, even commercial vehicles. You know, it's going to be very hard for the industry to be able to fulfill that when, you know, commercial vehicles today are pretty much at zero. The interesting thing, I think, for me is why the commercial side didn't adopt EVs, you know, before the personal side. You know, when you look at the sort of last mile delivery, you know, inner city trash pickup, things like that, these are all extremely low range vehicles that actually have a fairly high carbon footprint and are absolutely ideal to be electric. You know, to think that, you know, the trucking industry, you know, with Elon building trucks, you know, was really the first commercial vehicle, that doesn't make a lot of sense when you think that vehicle is going to go East Coast to West Coast. But I understand that, you know, there's a bigger picture there, you know, with the government looking at these mega charging, you know, these huge charging stations along the main sort of alleyways, and to try and get the industry electric. So there is a little bit, you know, the DOE is heavily involved in that. So there's a little bit more going on. But I think it's, you know, in general, it's always going to be a slower adoption. To Brian's point, my kids are the same. You know, it's, you know, when I grew up, it wanted to be a Porsche or a Ferrari, and my son immediately was like, well, I'm going to get a Tesla for sure as my first car, and I'm going to get an S-Plaid. Clearly not, but something more like you know, maybe a Model 3 that's got a couple of 100,000 miles on it would be more in line for him, but certainly more cost effective. But I mean, it's naturally going to be a slow adoption anyway, and at the end of the day, we don't have to try and solve it overnight, right? As long as we start to educate people that, you know, the vehicles are fine to drive, especially in a city. What I mean, to be in a congested area, LA, San Francisco, New York City, Chicago, why on earth do you want to have that engine running all day while you just sat there waiting in traffic? And, you know, I think those are also markets that really could care less about vehicle performance, to be quite honest. You know, I think if you could show somebody that the HMI experience is a lot better in an electric vehicle while you're stuck in traffic, I think that would be far more appealing. So you know, you can do your Amazon shopping while you're waiting for the congestion to go. So, you know, I think the main thing is you know, educate the kids is most probably the right choice too. You know, make them realize that, you know, if they don't have a very active role in looking after our planet here, there's not going to be much left.
Well, I can jump in there on the side of the commercial electric vehicle adoption rate. If you think the resistance to change from passenger cars is slow, You know, the amount of entrenchment, the business cases, people make decisions as passengers based off of the feel, based off of a number of other different factors. Anything commercial is really just, unfortunately, by the numbers, and until it makes sense, they don't really start to bring in change. So we literally see customers now ready, identifying the fact that, yes, to your point, you're exactly right, that all of the use case for their range needs, and even on the charging side, can literally be solved with today's products. It's now a matter of access, a matter of getting these things off of production line, taking a number and waiting for your 10 or 100 to be delivered, but also building out your infrastructure. It doesn't need to be massive charging infrastructure provided by the DOE on corridors. You're building out, in the most part, depots that have 10 or 15 podiums and bollards that have 30 kilowatt, 50 kilowatt chargers. The trenching, every aspect of that integration, working with your local electrical provider, working with the city for permitting. None of these things are known for going quickly, and so it's just even slower. You can put in an EV charger on your home's 200 amp, 240 circuit pretty quickly, and most electricians can do that in an afternoon. And you can bring home a Tesla and be doing the majority of everything you need, like within a weekend if you are able to buy that car. So it's definitely a slower moving beast, turning a aircraft carrier, as they talk about, but it's literally in the works. And to the point earlier about EV adoption rates, if there are millions of cars out there, we're going to be slowly converting 1%, 2% at a time year over year. But I shared a link in the chat here talking about how sales year over year are up 76% when it comes to EVs. And it was 11%, I think it was, or 12% of all sales this past year were EVs. And so in a relative sense, the rate, is very fast and compounding, but it's just we have an entrenched 50 plus years of vehicles to displace. So there's a rate versus the total quantity to be considered as well.
Yeah, and it's one really interesting, kind of observation that we've had. When you look at who's buying new cars, the median age is 55 years old. It's not young, and that's across the board, and sometimes it's skewed even higher. So one of the really fascinating insights that we had of who's influencing the consumers that are buying not just EVs but just traditionally new cars tends to be actually not the wife or the husband or the spouse or the girlfriend or the boyfriend. It's actually the kids in the back seats that are to kind of David's earlier point is pulling the parents and say, hey, why are you buying that gas guzzling V12 that's killing the environment? And that's having a big impact on purchasing sales, higher than I've ever anticipated or ever expected. So I think by really focusing on the customer, focusing on that age demographic, and saying what is the education platforms that they need to really improve adoption, and that's going to their media sources that they're using, that's kind of making vehicles that are easy to use, intuitive, that are simple, that don't have the jargon that is in the industry. That I think is going to really make the adoptions of EVs, and the car company and the OEM that does that correctly is the one that's going to start to own a little bit more market share than everyone else.
So Brian, actually, I thought it was kind of interesting how you were mentioning your son's first go-to was the Tesla over a Civic Type R, for example. And, that kind of touches on something that I've been kind of pondering for a while, which is, so EVs, for example, obviously are kind of going hand in hand with autonomous driving. That driving experience, though, is so different than what ICE would bring to the table, right? With that, the rumbling of the V8 and the, engaging with the clutch. It's all about driver engagement. It's literally hands-on with everything that you do. And it's a very haptic experience. It's very physical touch oriented, right? But with autonomous driving, and specifically with electric vehicles, right, you're seeing that level of engagement, or at least required engagement, just exponentially decrease, right? And so My question for everybody is, how do you see electric vehicles still being able to bring that same level of joy in the driving experience and really still have that human car relationship, if you will? Because that's something that I've personally been thinking a lot about. And, I think that's kind of where ICE sort of has a win, right? And maybe that's why the market is still holding on to it so dearly, is because that hands-on kind of engagement is just kind of irreplicable, right? So how do you guys sort of see EVs kind of being able to have that same level of joy in the driving experience?
I've seen a bit of action, actually. I mean, some of the earliest adopters were taking, EV West, for instance, taking old cars and bringing in like random found Tesla modules, integrating them into these kind of electro resto mods. And a number of them actually don't drop the clutch out. And to a degree, there is still that interaction that you can have. Granted, you don't need to, but to a degree, there is an option for maintaining that level of linkage. It just also, if you want to talk about, the enjoyment of a car and the driving experience, try accelerating out of a corner in a Tesla. No one's saying that's boring, right? Every aspect of EV driving is just exciting in different ways. You still have some sounds, they're just different sounds. I think it's definitely new, it's different. You're not going to be able to replicate some of these old things. I think it's akin to that perspective where people are looking at gas stations and trying to replicate them with EV charging when they're not like for like. It's an entirely different experience and different set of needs and capabilities and limitations. And so trying to replicate is possibly going down the wrong path. I think as people become more familiar, they're going to hear the whirl going in, at that high pitched frequency, and that's going to become some of the new excitement versus the rumbling V8 that we all grew up on knowing as performance.
Yeah, and I think for us, in our car at least, it's not silent at all. It's more like a spaceship with all kinds of sounds, compressors, and things going on at the same time. So there's some excitement there, but that's of course not going to go on the road eventually. And I think with us in the Netherlands, I believe there's also not so much of the perhaps V8 nostalgia that there is in other places on the planet. So I think that does play a part. And next to that, as Casey said as well, here in the Netherlands, we have recently also dropped the maximum speed, so it's quite boring to drive around here. Distances are not that big, only 60 miles an hour. It's the top speed limit at the moment. So the only joy that you still get is to use the launch mode of your electric vehicle. And I think that using that acceleration, deceleration, regenerative braking, playing around with that, I believe is also makes it really fun to drive. And it personally for me, it really has something.
Excuse me. I feel like we're really at just the tip of the iceberg when it comes to the innovations and the design changes that are going to come. When you look at the Formula E, the Gen 3, I was watching that video yesterday, and they were talking about how they had these fins that came on the back for aerodynamics, and it resembled an F fighter jet, right? And it made me kind of think about the innovations in design that we're seeing now. It's really and this is not meant in a bad way, but it's kind of in its infancy, right? The Cybertruck design, everyone just kind of freaked out about it because thought it was so strange looking. But I do think that battery technology and the capabilities and the possibilities that it opens, right, from a design perspective and from a user experience perspective, it's going to. I think we're going to see a lot of innovations in the coming years, and the way that we think about cars and the excitement and the joy of driving them we've kind of been in this framework mindset that it's sound, V8 rumble sound, and you know, we have these sets of emotions that I think we associate with, you know, 50 years of what cars have been like. But I do think that the future of what cars will be like for people is going to change somewhat dramatically. And I'm really excited to see what's going to come out, because I think there's going to be some game-changing things that no one, you know, sees coming yet. And when it does, it's going to be really you know, industry changing.
Yeah, I mean, to Casey and Brian's point, it's, you know, you can't really compare, because, you know, it's just the tip of the iceberg. We just move on. You know, my son, you know, is the other way. He thinks it's so cool, you know, that, you know, our car is so fast and doesn't really make any noise. I'm maybe not on board with that, you know, because I'm a little older. And for me, most probably the most ultimate is the V10 F1 sound. But again, you know, you have to move on, and it's just going to change. And I think the whole driving experience will change. And I think people will most probably prefer the silence than the drone of a V8. You know, that's not going to be for the old school, but I think the new guard very much. I think they'll think that just a noisy old car doesn't make any sense, because now it interferes with my stereo and, you know, what I'm listening to or doing on my HMI. So, you know, we're just going to evolve away from it, right? Just the same as they did when horses were pulling carts, right? You know, it's, you know, I'm sure they all thought that, you know, the engine would never catch on, because, you know, it was nice to have a friendship with your horse and feed it and play with it, you know, move on, right?
Yeah, you know, I look at some of the best cars that I've ever driven, and you know, think of, you know, the Mazda Miata, the classic Porsches, the 356, 911s from the 60s and 70s, and they're all extremely light. You know that, you know, and when you compare that to EVs are insanely heavy. You know, a Tesla weighs 5,400 pounds. You know, a Hummer EV is a staggering 6,900 pounds. You know, and when you're moving all that mass, you know, how can you have a really great driving experience? So I think, you know, lightweighting is going to be such a huge part of bringing back, you know, the fun into the experiences, and making things a little bit more nimble, a little bit more control, giving control back to the driver. It's just very difficult to do that in such a heavy car. And, you know, I think that's the, you know, kind of the value in saying carbon fiber and some of these innovations and lightweighting that could really make, you know, your average EV just a little bit more engaging, a little bit more control back to the driver.
I like what you said there at the end with kind of having that driver control. That's very true. And I think that is definitely going to be a really big challenge as well. Is it's human nature to want to have your own self-autonomy and be in control. And so I think that is going to be one of the toughest challenges, especially with kind of that's kind of what we're doing, is redefining the driving experience, right? So there's that joy that comes from having that control and that engagement, but then there's sort of I think it's kind of the catch-22 of how do you sort of increase trust even. It's like joy is one thing, yes, but at the baseline there's trust, right? And so we do have a certain level of driver engagement with, you know, with hydrogen and with electric. That's great. That is replicating that experience that we have with IC. That's wonderful. But beyond that, then with those technologies, even so, with autonomous driving specifically, you know, I think that's a whole other animal. And, you know, how do you sort of even see with autonomous driving? Do you see that really kind of staying on board with all the other technologies that are coming out? Do you see that as kind of being a little more passing? Do you see it kind of being as more of a hybrid experience where the driver still has some control and can supervise, but you know, is a little more hands-off in the experience? What do you kind of see that as?
I can say that for my Tesla, I almost never use autopilot. It's the funniest thing. I literally say, why let the computer have the fun? Right? It is just so enjoyable to drive a Tesla and like even commuting. Like, you know, I'm probably that guy who's, you know, swerving, coming in and changing lanes because it's just the handling, the acceleration. It's fun. Like very rarely do I just defer to the computer, but it's there for me. I think its utilization is going to be probably what 5-10%, but you know, I don't know. What about you guys?
I totally agree, Casey, and I'm the same. I have a Tesla, never use autopilot, but I think certainly for people that are commuting, so I think you're going to have more of a hybrid situation, especially when you're in traffic, which is maybe is the only time I use mine. If I'm going downtown, it's nice to be able to just put that on. If you're stuck in congested traffic, so I think it's certainly a hybrid thing for sure. And for me, like I say, if you're in a bit of a traffic jam, it's great to be able to just put that on and sort of switch off, because otherwise I'm the type of person that then gets distracted by my phone, and now I'm the one that's getting honked at because the traffic's moving and I'm not, and so forth and so on. So a little bit of a hybrid thing, I think.
Yeah. If I might jump in on the topic of trust from a different angle, is of course the autonomous driving needs a certain level of trust, but I can't even count the many of times people have asked me, "Ooh, isn't that like driving with a big bomb in your back?" Like it gets asked constantly, and I think that's a serious issue, especially if for hydrogen, at least hydrogen in mobility. But also for large-scale industrial applications or long-range mobility in ships and trucks. It's a serious issue to address, even though, it's of course perfectly safe. We encounter that a lot, and we try to work around that by indeed coming back to the education on all levels. So we even went to elementary schools, went to the government, to NGOs. I think everyone needs to pick it up, and interesting challenge for some people in marketing to encounter that.
Yeah, for sure. And I think there's this maybe there's this perception or expectation with autonomous driving, like it'll be like the Jetsons, right? Where it just everything works perfectly, there's no issues, and the reality is, it's still a technology that's being figured out. It's still going through its iterative phases of improvements and learnings and all those things that happen with technology. So I think it's it's going to be an incremental process. But I'm kind of with Casey. I prefer to do the driving. Of course, like the end of May, when I've got to take my family from LA to, the Bay Area, it'd be great to be able to just turn it on and not have to think about it and just take a nap and wake up, once we're up there. But, of course, we're not there yet.
Might be a while before bureaucracy catches up with us to that point, but that would be great.
For sure.
And that's definitely part of this as well, is never mind the technology and the, kind of the social adoption, right? Even just beyond that is just the bureaucratic, but we'll table that for another day. Actually, Brian, I have a question from our chat actually for you specifically. So Gary Scott asks, what materials and processing are you looking for regarding the wheels? I've done pre-preg and RTM, and the only way to reduce cost is to go to compression molding.
Yeah, I wish I had a more insightful answer here, just me being kind of the new guy at Savini and a non-engineer. I'm somewhat familiar with compression molding, and I know that for us, there's we've got, I think, 9 different wheel lines and 7 different configurations that we do. So there's a lot of different materials. It's a lot of it, I think it's just trial and error, just trying to figure out what's going to work best. Sean, I'm sure you're already way ahead of a lot of folks with your testing with carbon fiber and learning what works best and how to get that to the market. But maybe you can provide more insight than I can on this question.
Yeah, I mean, we've been looking at effectively different industries, taking technologies, and ironically, we're using a lot of technology from architecture equipment and applying it to automotive. The challenge though is not building the prototypes and building the solutions. It's certification and homologation. So that's where you kind of need the expertise, like Brian's company, to really get past all the certifications. So it's ready. It's prime time. That and it goes back to the point of trust and how do you regain trust? Well, you go through all the testing to get there.
Good point.
Awesome. Well, I really want to thank you guys for taking the time to join us today. And I also just want to say thank you to everyone at home for kind of just being a part of this conversation. I think it's so exciting just to be able to really talk about where everything is going. So in case anyone at home wants to be able to find you guys and keep up with what your companies are doing, where can we find you?
LinkedIn. LinkedIn is most probably the best place. Or you know, our websites, rle.com.
Yeah, same here. LinkedIn and SaviniWheels.com. It's totally great. And definitely reach out. Happy to talk.
Yeah, Romeo's all over LinkedIn, as well as if you actually go on YouTube and type in Romeo Power Manufacturing, you can see a tour of our manufacturing facility that we put together during COVID because people weren't able to visit in person to them. So that, and you know, just reach out. Our website's ready for any comments.
And for us, I think, yeah, the LinkedIn, Instagram, YouTube, I think we're kind of all over everywhere because that's comes back to the basic of our vision to educate the general public. So I hope that a few people that are viewing here today are triggered and interested by the project and want to know some more about the technology and what we do.
Yeah, I was at LinkedIn. That's us, and Cars and Coffee, if possible.
Definitely.
Awesome, guys. Well, thank you so much for your time again. And thank you, everyone at home. Also, go ahead and just throw in for myself. So my name's Emma. I also go by Spicy Carrot. I specialize in car content for the feminine gaze and for women. Feel free to follow me on Instagram at Spicy Carrot or spicycarrot.com. Yeah, but thank you guys again. This has really been great.
Thank you.
Thanks so much.
It was great to be
We'll
here.
see you guys next time.
All right.
Take care.
Take care, everybody.
Thank you, everybody.
Bye.
So we're here with Racing Pride today, doing some driving with our awesome ERA cars just off the production lines. This is the first one, and yeah, really great day. Got to see the car on track, so that's always awesome. And lots of other crazy cars here for a track day, so just a really fun day on track.
One to be played with, my whole crew's on the same kick. I'm top dog, I'm A-list, I'm a short shot, I can't miss. It's what I do, I was made for this. Married to the game like I'm chained to this. No matter how hard you try, me and you ain't the same as this. I'm a beast, I'm a dog, I'm a monster. Here's a message, I'm aggressive and I'm on ya. Put me to the test, I'm a coming first. Everybody wanna be the best, but no one wants to work. Look around. Nowhere to go, nowhere to turn to. You on your own. You don't wanna mess with me. I'm the best there is, the best there was. I'm the best there ever will be. You don't wanna mess with me. Keep testing me, and then you'll see for success I got the recipe. You don't wanna mess with me.
Introducing Extreme E, the world's first all-electric rally series. Racing around the world in a bid to highlight the most important climate issues of our generation.
Time is running out, but sport may have one of the answers.
Using sport as a way to highlight climate change is very important. We got all-electric race cars racing on some of the most extreme environments in the world.
Those environments are changing very fast. Electric cars are part of the solution.
Nothing like this has ever been done before.
Join our world-leading scientists aboard our floating lab, offering key insights into global climate patterns.
The Greenland ice sheet has been around for several million years. The ice is running off as water and increasing the rate of global sea level rise.
teams and sponsors from around the world. With elite male and female drivers.
Let's go.
Racing as equals.
Go!
In the most remote corners of planet Earth that remain at risk. Extreme E is here to revolutionize the world of motorsport.
This is going to be the most extreme motorsport. I'm super impressed. I'm still trying to adapt to it.
It's really important for women in motorsport to be highlighted like this.
Brand new.
Extreme E. The electric odyssey starts now.
Time is running out, but sport may have one of the answers.
Extreme E will race around the world on some of the most damaged landscapes. And in each of these, our legacy program aims to leave a lasting difference.
We will race on destroyed locations that then we will try to fix, or we will try to make a contribution to the local communities on and around those locations. We're going to leave a legacy behind. We're going to work with the local community, with the local authorities, to work on projects that will help the local communities here.
Steered by the United Nations Sports for Climate Action Guidelines, our scientific panel of 4 world-renowned experts will lead research in these already damaged locations.
Forest loss is one of the big challenges that we have at the moment in our planet. The Amazon is at the center of this challenge.
There is a trend in increasing deforestation in the region.
The Greenland ice sheet has been around for several million years. Since the last ice age, it's been retreating, but the rate of retreat has really accelerated. The ice is running off as water and increasing the rate of global sea level rise.
Each of our scientific experts will provide key insight into their specialist area, ensuring we race without a trace and leave a positive impact on the local area.
Something that's integral will be that we have legacy projects in place. So that'll be both social and environmental. We want to involve as many of the local community as possible, so that's schools or local organisations. We're looking at long-term renewable energy solutions, solar power, wind power, and then on the environmental side, NGOs that are working to counteract the effects of the climate change environment.
Five locations, 5 climate change issues, 1 mission.
We want to bring awareness, we want to showcase electric cars, and we want to leave behind a legacy for those locations that are facing huge challenges linked to climate change and to pollution.
Extreme H is the first ever global hydrogen championship. It will show hydrogen-powered cars that will race together with Extreme E in the same weekend. The combination of batteries and hydrogen covers the future of mobility. We will produce this prototype in the next 12 months. We will then start producing the race cars, and then in parallel with the 4th season of Extreme E, we will have the 1st season of Extreme H. To decarbonize mobility, we will need a combination of technologies. Only one technology won't be able to do the whole job. We need to find compatible technologies that will solve the whole problem. And I think battery-powered cars and hydrogen cars are both part of the same big solution.